Hello and welcome. Coming to you from the podcast studio, or maybe I'm not, depends on what is real. I'm Josh.
And I'm John, and these 101010
Oh no, it's happening again. Anyway, this is the Geek ETC podcast, where we dive into all things you can geek out about. Hello again.
Howdy.
Welcome back. Hey, you're not sick, are you?
No sickness.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Just glad to see that that's not...
System of a Down would be very disappointed, because I'm not down with that right now.
Well, that's disturbed.
Oh, whoopsie.
Well, then System of a Down really wouldn't be about it. They'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe they sung it in a garage once or something when they were all just goofed. Maybe they heard it on the radio and sung it, and they really liked it. I don't know.
Speaking of interesting covers, this is actually something I wanted to. I'm pretty sure I would be surprised if you'd seen it or heard it, but it was kind of blowing up on the internet a couple weeks ago, and I just kind of discovered it, and it took me down a rabbit hole of a certain band. Have you ever heard of the band Falling in Reverse?
I have heard that name. Yes, I don't think I've ever listened to them.
Right. They're a metal band, but they've kind of done some different, like they have some sort of rap things in some of their songs as well. But my wife has known them forever, and had played some of their stuff in the car, but I didn't really pay any attention to it. And then we actually went to a concert the other week that they were headlining.
Oh.
And so I saw them live just the other week, and they were also there with Ice Nine Kills, Under Oath, and Crown the Empire.
Heard of Under Oath too, I think.
Yeah, Under Oath, they were like kind of a big emo band back when we were in high school. They were like huge.
Emo.
And of the four, I'd say they were actually kind of the most disappointing. Like,
really? Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't really great, but Falling Reverse was amazing. Like, they had lasers and light shows, and they had like 4 like flamethrowers that shot up and did the pyro and everything.
Oh, nice.
So it was awesome. And so that kind of really cemented in for me to go check out some of their stuff. But what kind of re-piqued my interest, they did a cover of Last Resort by Papa Roach.
Oh.
And that was like an anthem of our time back in the day.
Oh, yeah. Cut my life into
pieces. Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah.
It was, I'm like, that was an awesome song. And so they did a reimagined version of it that's sort of a soft, sort of haunting ballad.
Oh.
And it's slowed down, and it is crazy though, because because it's slowed down and it's not like a rock song, it makes the lyrics like that much more potent. And it's a pretty, like, it's a very like emotional song and stuff, but I think he did, the lead singer Ronnie Radke, he did a very good job at it. I think it's a very well done reimagination of that song. And him as a singer, like, there's been tons of controversy around him on the internet, and there's like big sections of the internet that hate him, and there's big sections that like love him and stuff, but he's kind of gotten to this thing where he doesn't really care what people think about him anymore. He's just going to do what he wants to do, what he enjoys doing with music.
Yeah.
And like he's had songs, like one of the most popular songs they've done is a song called Zombified, which talks about cancel culture and about like they won't forget about things they bring up things you've said 10 years ago and will try to cancel you for it and stuff. But a lot of some of their songs, they have really good, really like awesome breakdowns in them, but really, really well written lyrics. And all their music videos are some of the most well produced music videos I've seen here lately. Like, they are killing it when it comes to the music video game. Music video game? Is that Rock Band and Guitar Hero?
Exactly.
But so yeah, I've just been kind of had a lot of their songs stuck in my head the past couple weeks ever since we went to that show, and I've dived into them, and I've had some fun kind of watching some reaction channels on YouTube kind of react to some of their music videos, and because some of the people, they're not expecting him to rap like he does, and they're kind of like blown away by it. It's pretty funny and entertaining to watch. And then they'll just transition and go into this like metal breakdown and stuff, and they're have no idea what's coming. So I've had some fun with that. But yeah, Falling in Reverse, they've got a few good songs that I've really been kind of obsessed with over the past week. But that, yeah, reimagination of Last Resort is worth checking out, I would say.
Yeah, let's see. I've been listening to. I'm a very eclectic like music person. Metal's not my big thing, you know.
Right.
Uh, Obviously, I introduced you to Sabaton. Like, I really like
Yes.
them as far as
Which,
some of
like,
my.
while we're on the topic, like, maybe our one of our upcoming shows will just be about music
Well,
itself.
to be fair, and so I've actually talked to one of my buddies who's actually he's a it'll be a surprise, but he's in a pretty popular band. They do really well. They're a touring band, and he's the guy I train with, and I've talked to him about coming on the podcast before. So he's a bassist and guitarist, and
Oh wow.
pretty cool. I'll tell you about it afterwards. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I've been listening to a lot of Vichnaya Pamyat, which is it's the one
What?
song. I've just had so much paperwork to do at work over the last week, and
Uh
it's like the ending song from the HBO series Chernobyl, and
oh,
it's just like nice background music, and just I guess my ADD, it just helps me focus in. And
like
so,
that. What is it? Is it called Panoramic or something? The theme song from Book of Eli.
oh yeah,
That's one of those songs that during that time I was obsessed with, just because it was just like this droning, atmospheric, sort of haunting melody that you could just put on, and it would just kind of set this atmospheric mood that would kind of take you to other places.
yeah. I just saw a bunch of other stuff. I was like, I need to talk about if we do a music episode. Hey, then
Yeah, I can feel
obviously,
myself starting to like, yeah, wanting to like look on my phone again and be like, oh, what
yeah.
have I been listening to? But I'm like, that would
No,
make a good podcast stuff.
that'll make a good podcast for sure. Especially since you're such a. I mean, we've talked about before. Josh is a pretty good guitarist and bassist himself. So he's got much of a he's got a much better understanding of the actual things that go into it. So
Into music, yeah. But we'll talk about that after the show.
absolutely.
Anything of I had something I was gonna say, if there's anything of interest that you've heard going on recently, but
Well, you go ahead with your thing because that'll
it,
tie into mine.
yeah. So just a little UFO news update. Um, there's
Because there's a
been
lot of them.
yes, there is, and there's been a lot going on with these, this whole whistleblower thing that's kind of been, surging here lately. A lot of people coming out, a lot of new whistleblowers coming out and speaking about things. And it's caught traction in the government when it comes to things like Senate and Congress and some of these things. Like there's some actual legitimate things starting to gain traction and happening. For instance, on the Representative Tim Burchett, who's been leading a lot of this stuff, tweeted today that the House Oversight Committee will hold a hearing on UAP on Wednesday, the 22nd or the 26th. So coming up next week, not this Wednesday, or I guess, so this episode comes out, you're listening to this on the 19th if you're listening on the day it came out. So next week, next Wednesday, will be a House Oversight Committee talking about unidentified anomalous phenomenon, as it's known now. And he says underneath of it, we're done with the cover-ups. So there's legitimate people in legitimate positions like diving into this. And in addition to that, Chuck Schumer, the head of the Democratic Party, in like debuted this big bill that's specifically talking about like coming up with a disclosure plan that like straight up mentions stuff about disclosure plans and having to develop something like that, essentially stating that, like, I don't know what information that they've got, if it's been stuff that's presented to them from different whistleblowers or different other sources or things, but people have a lot of people are saying in these Marco Rubio's talked about it a lot, but a lot of these people in the Senate and the and Congress and stuff are saying that they've been in some classified briefings with various whistleblowers and stuff, and they're convinced. Some of these people are convinced that there are like undisclosed, maybe government or shadow government ran operations where some, you know, what did it, I think it even mentioned it in that proposed legislation from Schumer that it specifically mentions non-human intelligence. That they are using that as a term, like in Congress and Senate, like that they are putting out in the public that term of non-human intelligence. So they know something. I think that they've seen something, they know something, and that has pushed them over this edge of starting to take this stuff seriously and making some stuff happen.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I anytime we talk about government making anything happen,
Right.
it seems like that's kind of a joke, right? I mean, it's
Oh, for sure.
no matter what your feeling is towards either party, if you're United States citizens or whatever, most people would say, well, obviously the government's. Look at the post office. It loses money every single year. Meanwhile, FedEx and UPS are thriving, right? Why is that? It's just they put people in charge that shouldn't be in charge, and they don't do a good job.
Right.
Not that it's not a good profession. If you're if you're a postal worker and you're listening to this on your route, heck yeah, more power to you. I appreciate it. Your service is welcomed, but it's one of those things that I'm sure even them, if you go talk to any person, I watched a anthrax video back in the early 2000s when there was like an anthrax scare where there was a bunch
not the band Anthrax.
not the band Anthrax, but there was a guy, there was he was actually a government researcher who had access to anthrax, and he was sending anthrax out in the mail to different people, and people died because of it.
Jeez.
And some of the people that died were people that worked in like the Washington D.C. postal, like where they handle all the postage, like one of the bigger warehouses, and they had an idea that stuff was in there. And they're like, it's fine, just keep going, But if it was like FedEx or something like that, I'm sure they would have been like, no, we're going to shut this place down. But
yeah,
it was just people that were, not with it, and people died because of their actions. So I do get worried. Speaking of whistleblowers, I saw. Have you watched? You're familiar with the Sean Ryan podcast?
yeah.
So I listened to the most recent one, was the Stephen Greer guy, and man, I tell you what, that guy seems mentally ill. And I know he's like a big focus on everything, but I listened to that whole thing and he can't give good answers sometimes. And some of the things are just so fantastical. And then some of he doesn't want to divulge certain things that have to do specifically with them, but he divulges all this stuff that he thinks he knows from other sources. And it's just so odd. So my friend Alexander, he was telling me, hey, go listen to this. And we were kind of discussing it via text. And
yeah,
I'm sure he's like hitting on little things here and there. But when he's talking about like some of the stuff he says is just so, not even like the technology stuff. It's just the way that he talks about it. And he almost seems like a guy that has a doctorate that started going a little bit off the deep end, but he's well-spoken enough that people just kind of listen to him. So I don't know.
I could see where you could come to that conclusion. There was actually another episode that came out today of the Sean Ryan Show that's one of the whistleblowers that came forward because of Greer.
And you know what? Right now, there probably might be some people that come forward, but when he talks about having like 700 or 800 people that he has under it, like he's got 800 people.
Yeah.
That like, it's a weird number, like that's a lot of people. It's hard to get that many people to do anything, that aren't telling a fib, right? If you you take a pool of 800 people, there's some of them telling a fib. And then with him, like I remember the last thing he did that made me laugh while I was listening to it is he was talking about like some Hopi Native American story at the end of the podcast. And then he just divulges for no reason like we're in middle school, that his grandma is like half Cherokee, and then he starts talking about his dad being part Cherokee. Like, it's that kind of thing where people would
Yeah.
always want to have something cool to say, and they're like, "Well, my grandpa's Cherokee, my or what,"
He
and it's
he is
always
definitely
Cherokee.
yeah, he's definitely an odd fellow for sure. I'll give you that.
And
Um,
you know what? Sometimes really smart people are. That
yeah.
is also a possibility. However, some of the stuff he said, especially when he's talking about like I think there's like a shadow government among the United States with our intel community? Absolutely. Do I think there's like control with like the military industrial complex? Absolutely. Dwight D. Eisenhower warned us. We didn't
Mhm.
listen. We've seen it all over the place. No matter what you know side of the aisle you're on, it's always been an issue. But um, sometimes I think we like to think we know more than we do. My mom worked for a general in the 70s, so the Air
Mhm.
Force general in Tinker Air Force Base. And she was a secretary for a general, went to his meetings and stuff like that. And Tinker Air Force Base is in Oklahoma City. It's one of the largest air depot the United States Air Force has. All kinds of planes in and out. My mom has always been like the person in my family, like within my immediate family, that's been the most alien like oriented, like where she
Mhm.
thinks stuff is out there. I remember her talking about seeing, she worked on an Air Force base. She saw planes every single day. She saw fighter jets. She saw bombers. She saw stuff. But she remembers seeing some stuff at one time with her mom, who was picking her up from the base, that was so strange that she absolutely thought, it was absolutely a UFO to her.
Mm.
So I don't know. It's a lot of stuff out there, but then it also makes you wonder, like, why now? I mean, obviously, there's been some incidents lately, but there's been incidents all over, like, for years and years and years and years,
Mhm.
and so it makes you wonder, like, why? What else? What's the purpose of divulging this stuff?
I think there, like what I've heard from at least people is the reason a lot of this is happening now is because of that whistleblower law that was passed, and before now everybody, because their lives have been threatened, everybody's just been too scared to come forward and say anything. But because they have these protections, that they're slowly starting to come out a little
Well,
bit.
but see, that's the thing, right? That's legal protection, right? Their lives have been threatened, but now there's a law protecting them from legal prosecution,
Hmm.
right?
Well, there's
There,
still people that are even
this
saying they won't come out, but also because of their lives have been they don't want to risk their families' lives
exactly.
and stuff.
See that. So people are like, well, now I can finally come out because I have this piece of paper that says you won't prosecute me, but you're still worried about a government that might kill you or shoot you in the back of the head or
Hmm.
give you a heart attack ray or something like that. That stuff would all still be just as viable, whether there's a piece of paper
Right. The
saying,
the guy in that episode that came out today of that Sean Ryan, I don't remember what his name is off the top of my head. I've got it right here. Michael Herrera, that Marine who had his claims were that he came upon that like 300-foot saucer down in
"Oh,
Indonesia or whatever.
yeah, I'm gonna have to
He
listen to that one because he sounded real sketchy the last time I heard from him."
listening to this podcast though in full length as opposed to just a small excerpt at that press briefing, listening to a kind of a full thing, it it doesn't sound like he's lying. It really does. Like it sounds like he's pretty passionate about what he saw and stuff. But again, with any of this, I have to say like
It's all with a
until
grain of salt.
yeah, exactly. I said everything. As with all somewhat fantastical stuff, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. Like and again, until we see them, you know, like I mean, obviously, me or you are on different levels of belief of this kind of particular topic, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And on that, for some people, until they see those, they see the grays, they see the little green men or the tall white aliens, whatever it may be, until they see some aliens or see the craft and stuff, it'll be at that point whenever they fall over that line of really believing everything.
Yeah, I don't think I would need that much necessarily, but it is
Mm.
definitely something to think about. And I think
What
that kind of leads us in today's topic, honestly.
Well, before that, what do you think? What would it take? What would it take? I think for to fully convince you that that all this stuff might either be real or whatever. Like, are you able to think? Is there one particular thing that maybe could happen
I
that would
deal
push
with
you over
a
the edge?
I deal with a lot of people that have mental illness in my
Mm.
career, and a lot of people that lie.
Yeah.
And so, Lieutenant Colonel David Fravor, when I heard him talk about the Tic Tac, and I heard him speak about the Tic Tac alien and the his gimbaled video from
Mm.
the camera gimbaled video from the F-18 or whatever he was flying, I 100% believe. I can tell him as a
Yeah.
person, like he was 100% telling the truth.
Yeah.
I never got, and
Your
he
BS
answered it.
meter doesn't go off
It
with
doesn't
him.
go off. It doesn't go off. I started listening to the Stephen Greer one, and I immediately it goes off
Right.
the
Right.
deep end. You know, it's fluctuating all
It
over
does
the
with a
place.
lot of people with him.
It does, and I think that's an issue where if he's that guy, you need a better spokesperson. You need somebody that's better at telling the truth. You know,
Yeah.
like it's a science now. You know, like I've had career training and that kind of thing about people, people that lie. And so when I hear someone talk and then I look at the way that they're talking, I hear the manner, I see that stuff. And then, you know, you're aware of like how things work in certain government,
Yeah.
jobs. And you just say, well, I don't know, man, that sounds like you're just trying to put on a show. And so that's where I'm at. Like, if David Frey, like the Brazil, we talked about the Virginia Brazil
Yeah.
incident. I am way more inclined. I'm like way more inclined to believe that happened, just because when I watched those people, specifically, there was a couple people in that show
Yeah.
where I was like, okay, and they told stuff that made that, they didn't say like, oh, all of them were talking about like U.S. aircraft coming in and stuff like that. That's kind of like almost a diss to their own nation. Does that make
Mm.
sense? That the U.S. because it's kind of like that, like the U.S. came in and saved the day, kind of thing, and or the fact that we have that much power, if that makes sense. And so
Yeah.
when you think about the like that incident specifically, I say, well, those people are believable. The stuff talking about all these people talking about U.S. aircraft coming in, and of course we want to stick our nose in it. The government, our government, or our shadow government, or whoever would want our grubby little fingers on it. I'm sure they worked out something, where they could do it, and like, because like I said, it was almost like a diss. It was almost like like their country couldn't handle it. Which obviously, Brazil is they are a populous country. They have,
Mm.
there's a lot of money flowing through there. They do a really great job. It's a beautiful place to visit, and it has its poverty like everywhere else. But the fact that they're like, oh, we need the U.S. to come in, or the U.S. came in and kind of took over things, to me, as like if I was like, oh, Canada came into the U.S. and handled this for us. Like I saw a UFO crash on the interstate, and a Canadian helicopter landed and took it away. But like, why are the
Right.
Canadians doing here? Right?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and no offense to our Canadian listeners, but it's just ought to be the same way if
Right.
a UFO crashed in Manitoba and then you see one of our Blackhawks landing. You're like, what's
Yep.
going on? So I don't think it would take like me seeing it physically. I just need people that are believable. So
Right.
and don't stand the people from Virginia, right? Didn't make any money off of anything,
Yeah.
right? They're not making those little girls, like there's people still living in poverty that saw this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they had nothing positive came from that. And that doesn't mean that people can't lie, because people still like even just having fantastical stories.
Yeah.
However, when there's enough of that body language, all that kind of stuff, even though they're speaking Portuguese, I still feel comfortable with like believing the majority
Right.
of those folks.
So it takes somebody that you know that you could deem like credible and authentic and trustworthy
Yes.
to come out on some platform of some kind and like undeniably say, yep, like I have firsthand interactions with these. I have like either worked, I'm a doctor of some kind. I've worked on the, non-human intelligence beings, or, have worked with these craft or whatever it may be. It
Yeah.
takes somebody like that.
And the other thing is they don't, if you know everything, if you have an answer to everything and pretty simple direct answers you bail on, then I'm not interested. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if you have an answer for every single thing, you're typically a liar, right? Unless you're an expert, like expert in that thing. When you start talking about like I want you to be an expert in propulsion systems, and then I I want you to have like a little, like there's a grading scale for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when you're creating a character, you know how they have those like, there's some of them where they have that like it's almost like a spherical thing, and you kind of drag
Yeah.
it to like, I want more strength, and you can have knowledge about multiple things, but you can't know everything, right? There's some things
Yeah.
that you're not going to be an expert on, and that you bring somebody else with you. You bring a friend. That's when you bring a friend with you, you're like, okay, well, I've got Lieutenant Colonel David Fravor here. He understands how aircraft
He's an
work. He does
expert
all this stuff.
in that field.
He's expert in that field, and you bring somebody else in who's
Yep.
who's like, okay, well, I understand X,
Yeah.
if David Fravor had like landed his jet and there was a dead body there, he's like, it smelled terrible, and then a EMT showed up, and he's a whistleblower too, and he's like,
Yeah.
I saw the body, I was with Lieutenant Colonel David Fravor, looking at it, the whatever layer, like the epidermis was peeled away, and there was
Right.
only that kind of thing. That's where I start to lend credence to things.
Hmm.
So
Well, I'll be interested to see what happens at this oversight committee because there's reports that David Grush guy might give a testimony, but that there could be also a couple other whistleblowers give testimonies. There's no been word on who that might be or anything. It could be new people, so it'll be interesting nonetheless to see what happens from it.
well, yeah. So
Yeah.
I
But
think this pre-talk blends really well into our main topic for today,
right,
which is we're
I would
geeking out
agree
about the simulation theory.
about simulation theory,
That's
which
right.
again is a theory
It is. It's a
proposed
hypothesis
by certain individuals.
by a Swedish fellow. But Nick Bostrom is one of the main guys. I think it's like a pretty natural thing. I think a lot of people can sit around, but Nick Bostrom is a Swedish philosopher and
Yeah,
scientist,
I think
doctorate.
is it Michio Kaku who's talked about it as well? Maybe.
He has, yeah. I mean, I think it's natural. I think any person, after they get done playing Skyrim or Grand Theft Auto, will be like, I wonder if this is a video game. I think
Mm.
I had that thought when I was in seventh grade. Totally unrelated to any philosophy, like formal
I,
philosophy
I
claim.
probably had that thought probably around the time I first saw The Matrix. I would
Yeah.
say that like before then, that wouldn't have even been on my radar. But then after, it may even been like honestly maybe after I had seen that as more of an adult,
Yeah.
where it could actually sink in, and it kind of had that like when you have that small little moment of ponderance after watching it, like with the way technology in our life is going, like that kind of makes sense that it
Yeah.
could happen.
Yeah, I think there are so many theories into like what's going on, like what is reality, right? And I think the simulation theory is one of those things. Like the simulation theory hypothesis is like one of those things that's when you start thinking about it, it is something that you can latch on to very easily. And there's little things, like I think this could go into it a little bit. Is like you deal with things like the Mandela effect,
I was
right?
getting ready to mention that.
You deal with things like the Mandela effect. I have a good memory. We've talked about it. You've mentioned it several times on the show that I have a good memory, right? Elephant
Yes,
never
yes.
forgets. And to me, those things that like I remember that are not what they are, and this kind of group remembrance, thereby just they don't dismiss it, but like scientists or whatever will dismiss it as just like this like mass like mistake that we all made.
Some kind of mass psychosis or mass misremembrance or something.
I've never met a person when I introduce the topic to them. I'm like, "Do you remember the Berenstein Bears?" And they're like, "Yeah."
Well, yeah.
I'm like, "They're not real. They're the Berenstain Bears." And they're like, "No, they're not."
You're like, what are you talking about?
I've never met a single person who's like, "No, they're absolutely the Berenstain Bears. Absolutely. STAIN. 100%." They're all like, "No, it was Steen. STEIN. We remember it." You know why? Because we were learning how to read with those books. Like we were literally in the process. It was a formulative book. Like we were learning, like as American children, that was a book that we learned how to like. I was like, "Oh,
I never thought about that was part of that learning process as a child of like you had a set of like there was a collection of different types of books that like as a kid growing up in the 90s, like these are the books you read to learn how to read. and that was
Absolutely.
one of the collections for sure. Huh? I never. I kind of have glanced over that when it comes
I
to them
think that's another
particularly.
reason why it's like an important thing like that, because you are learning to read, you're getting corrected on things too. Does that make sense? Like,
Mm,
and it's when you say, uh, I one of my most embarrassing moments from when I was in elementary school. It's not an embarrassing moment, right? But I remember being in second grade and we were reading a Revolutionary War book, and I saw the word colonel,
oh yeah,
Colonel, and I said colonial,
I did the
and I
same
got
thing.
I got corrected, and I remember being embarrassed by it. But it's not. I was in second grade, and so
Yeah,
it's the same thing. When you say that, by if I was everything was like the Steen Bears, you would be like, no, it's Berenstain. Like
yeah,
I do that with my son currently. Like I make sure that his grammar is correct. Like I don't let him just
yeah,
keep saying things wrong. So unless it's super cute, and then we'll let him do it once or twice, but we normally correct it.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a big issue. So part of me just wonders like what with like when we're talking simulation theory
Hmm.
is, like somebody had to create the simulation, and that's the big question.
There had to be an origin somewhere, and on the origin,
Yes.
like a big thing that people discuss is like there's kind of two ways to look at it. Is either yeah, there was an origin and we're in it, or we are the people who are the origin
Yeah.
and we will make it.
Yeah. um it is a very perplexing thing to think about, like when you think about like, well, is there somebody on the other end of a computer screen with a mouse who's just like hit run, and we're all just going about our stuff, and they're trying to see like, well, what's the best way to how should we do it,
And that's even kind of you can look at like there's that way of looking at it of the what we know as a you know when we think about where we're at in reality in society in reality in our current moment in time where even the concept of a person sitting in front of a computer with a mouse and keyboard programming or making games or virtual reality things like that as a thing, or you can take it even way down the metaphysical line and maybe it's yeah it's not somebody sitting behind a screen programming or pressing start, that it's a widely advanced and interconnected AI system of consciousness or something that has created this false reality that we live within or something
But
like
then even then, who created the AI,
right
like
that yeah
it all goes back to that.
that may have started from the person with the computer.
People talk about the Big Bang. Is the Big Bang the computer turning on and like the screen expand, like the color expanding in the screen, or
Right. Do you remember in old like CRT monitors or something that there was a button called DGOS?
ooh, I don't know.
It's like an old, kind of an older, like nerdy kind of thing for sure. I've seen it in like the nostalgia posts and stuff. That there's a on old CRT computer monitors. I don't really even know the reason for it or what it did, but there was you could go into like the monitor settings and there's a button called like DGOS, and you would press it and the whole screen would kind of like warp out and colors would get weird, and it would kind of it would reset something in the screen. To this day I don't really know what it did, but it was one of those things, and like you couldn't immediately do it right after, but it's like in CRT things something would build up and you would go and do it and it would kind of reset it
Hmm.
again. It was kind of like defragging your hard drive or something. Like people don't do that
Yeah.
anymore, but it was a thing people knew that yeah, you got to do it every now and then.
Yeah. Um, yeah, man, it's such a like I remember watching, I know we both like Rick and Morty, the series, and when they go to like the Blitz and ships or whatever, like their idea on Dave and Buster's,
Yeah,
and they're like, I'm playing Steve, and like Morty goes in, he like lives this entire life, and then he falls off a ladder and dies. He comes out of it, and they're like, hey, you made it to 70 something years old. And he's like, my
right.
wife, my children, like he's it's like that kind of thing. Like, what is that? What we're going through now? Like, is there is there like one single consciousness that every single one of us is going to run like simultaneously?
Hmm.
What
That
changes it's
kind
going
of
to make?
bleeds in what you're mentioning there, that about the simulation theory kind of having some connection to just the idea and concept on consciousness and what that means, and linking into, yeah, like what does happen when we die? Do we wake up from the simulation and are in some kind of pod or some chair as like a then like the Matrix kind of thing where we're just being used for our energy, or does the cycle, do you get just re-put back into another version of it that's running
Or not at all.
simultaneously, or does it just go black? Or, and if
Yeah.
that's the case, then what explains near death experiences, or some visions and things people have on certain psychedelics and stuff that they've been experienced and whatnot. Like there's a lot of different interconnected things there that you know depending on your kind of views and beliefs and things, or even yeah, again diving into people's religious beliefs as far as like after death and heaven and hell and all that sort of stuff. Like there's a lot to rack your brain on when it comes to all that.
There is. Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, when I think about it, and even right now, sometimes when we're talking about simulation theory, or like I'm talking to somebody, you're having like a work conversation, like you just nerding out, and you're talking,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be like, what if right now is the first moment of sentience you've ever had, and everything else is just an implanted memory that seems as real as anything else,
Mm-hmm.
right? But where we are right now, right here, we are finally awake, and everything else never actually even happened. Like the game just started,
Right.
you know?
And that could happen at any moment,
Yeah,
kind of thing. Like any moment you stop to think about it, that could be that moment.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that many times. I think me and you've probably even talked about, like,
Oh,
said
yeah.
that before. And yeah, you think about that every now and then, and you're like, is this that moment? Did it just happen? Is this the beginning? But then if that's the case, yeah, then you come back to that initial thing, like, well, who or what created all those memories and all that past, all the history? And is there some, like, are we both like some form of consciousness in the same simulation, or is like your friends and family all just artificial as well?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it kind of devolves into that main character syndrome kind of thing.
Hmm.
Like, are any of us the main character and everybody else is NPCs, or is this some kind of like broad online MMO co-op thing that me and you are both running through the same simulation at the same time?
Or we're the
And
same person.
yeah, yeah, what if we're the same thing, but we just like chose a
Just
different path at the beginning that split off?
It's just different instances that have all
Yeah.
run, and then they're all combined together. I don't
Mm.
know. It's such like a hard thing to like even discuss, because
Can we respec? Is that allowed? I'd like
it
to
would be
respec a couple
interesting.
things.
It would be interesting for sure. Like it gets into like a weird place spiritually, especially when you think about that kind of
Mm.
thing. Um, it would make sense, like the form that we're in currently, would be similar to whoever the creators were, right? Or are. So like, is it us? Is it us from the future? Um,
And like you look at humanity as a thing, and like there's an obvious difference between us and like animals and
yes.
bacteria or virus or amoeba and all that kind of thing. Like there's
Yeah.
obviously like there's this level of sentientness,
Yeah, and people can talk about octopuses, and they can talk about dolphins, and they can
dolphins,
talk
and
they can talk
yeah,
about cephalopods and that kind of thing, but they don't have highways. They don't have, and I get that it's not like doesn't mean anything, but
it all comes down to
they
the
they
thumbs, man. They don't have
it,
opposable thumbs, so
it's true. I bet an octopus could do a whole lot of cool stuff.
octopus probably
But
could.
if you're not like, if octopus know that they're in danger and they're not doing something to protect themselves, i.e., putting on armor or like figuring out how to blow up
Someone's gonna
fishing vessels
send us some video of some octopus like breaking
with a
apart a shell and using it as armor against like a shark or something. I'm like, shit,
cool.
they're doing it.
Yeah,
That probably exists out there.
but we all know that like the humans are the smartest. It's not like I don't think that's really an argument for most people, but it, I don't know, man. It's one of those things that like when I start thinking about it, I start talking about anything to do with like, are we living in a simulation? How does this simulation run? And are we kind of cursed to stay inside of it? You know, like
Mm,
is it gonna be like, because for us, I imagine this like our quantum computing power that we might have one day, right? Would be able to run simulations. Let's just call it Age of Empires or something like that,
mm,
right? I imagine you could run like Age of Empires simulation on a quantum computer, Age of Empires 2 quantum computer, and you could run Age of Empires through every possible outcome almost in the blink of an eye.
yeah.
But all of that stuff like actually took time in game. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it makes you wonder like how like if this is all like just time dilation wise, like this the difference. Like is this just a hit enter and it's like it's just
That's a weird,
it's
that's a trippy thing to think about when you get into, when you really start critically thinking about time dilation and how time, if you kind of classify time as a dimension that can be molded and shaped and reformed in a sense, so that, yeah, in one version of time, that Age of Empires happened in a second of computer processing, but within that time,
Mhm.
it, yeah, there was like hours, thousands of hours of gameplay that happened.
The game lasted that just one session lasted an hour and a half, you
Exactly.
know.
Whereas one session was an hour and a half here, in another instance of reality, it was just a half a second.
Because
So,
because the computing power was so great, it was able to
yeah,
calculate that hour and a half game into just seconds. And that's what
yeah.
I get really interested in. That's sometimes when I think about like, well, everything that's going on, we talk about aliens, we talk about all this stuff. And, you know, I guess this is going to be kind of like a mixed bag. So I think we're going to be kind of going back and forth because I'm going to bring up like the Stephen Greer stuff again. Stephen Greer said that uh, that when we first tested nuclear weapons, right, that it started this quantum like entanglement field, like that or whatever that like aliens were like, oh, there's something. But
Mm.
we know, like if you think about what we know from like
Scalar shock waves and things.
astronomy, right? There are stars going supernova. Like there are neutron stars exploding. A 50 megaton bomb or 100 megaton bomb going off on a planet. How is that? I mean, I get that it's an atomic. At the atomic level, we've split an atom, and it's a significant release of energy. But it's almost main character syndrome there for us to think that our one, you know, I imagine the number of nuclear tests that have been done in the world are probably less than 200, right?
Mm.
Altogether, including, the use of the two in World War II, and then the main countries that have nuclear weapons as far as testing goes. I imagine there's been less than 200 trials. And I bet that's even being generous, 200 of nuclear weapons in the world. And the idea that would be like, oh, this is what's going to get the aliens interested. Like, oh, now they're going to destroy themselves. Why do they care if we destroy themselves? I mean, I watched have you ever watched The Day the Earth Stood Still?
I don't think I have.
There's two. So there's an old one.
Yeah.
I forget who's in that one. It's like from the 50s or 60s or something like
Yeah.
that. I've watched it a couple times, and then we just watched. My wife and I watched it. The newest one with Keanu Reeves playing Klaatu, the
Mm.
alien in it, and he's come to see, kind of like they've had agents on the planet, and he's come now to see if we're worthy of whatever, or he winds up like making arc essentially. Like there's a bunch of different spheres that pop over all the planet, and like different animals go inside of them, and then he unleashes pretty much the apocalypse on everybody.
Oh,
Winds up
jeez.
getting rid of it at the end, but it's one of those things like I think there's a lot of like I think humans like to hate on themselves a lot, and I think it is because we do stuff that like obviously isn't good, right? Like
Yeah.
we obviously shouldn't have the Pacific garbage patch, like that shouldn't exist,
Right.
right? We should do better. We should not kill animals. We should not
We should not
drive
kill
things
each
to
other.
we should not kill each other, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think violence is a rational solution sometimes, whether we like to or not. Violence is
Yeah.
a solution to things. However, you know, should we kill each other? Probably not. So there's there's a lot of stuff that goes in, like, you talked about, well, um like, I imagine that other people would know that aliens exist, like other countries would. And if that was the case, I feel like the UN would be doing like a really good job about bringing people together. If that was the case, unless for some reason they're telling them to be separate, or if that's just what the program says, like what is the
Mm,
what is the program saying? Like, I don't know. It makes me wonder if you're doomed to like live in this of like different variations of the same thing, and I think it'd be like a curse, like the
yeah.
quantum computer, they hit enter and it runs like every single thing, or runs million instances of it. Is there going to be a million instances of me, or
And
even less? Is there only going to be 300,000 because it never got to me even?
and does that is that where like say that that's a thing, and is that what would potentially be an explanation for like the infinite timelines and the infinite the multiverse and the infinite things and yeah, there is 400 million simultaneous instances of your same thing playing out like you said, and maybe there's data leakage between things, and that's where we get those Mandela effects
And
type of stuff. Or is that,
exactly that
and you could even take it further. Maybe that's what explains things like ghosts or things people have seen, that it's some residual
artifact.
artifact or image from a different, like one of the timelines that is very parallel and close to our own, that again has some data leakage or corruption, crossing over, that, manifests that, again, these two universes are so the same, but maybe they're just on slightly different timelines, that you saw this person from this Victorian era that happened to have a house in the same, or live in the same house, but alternate timeline, and they're still living that life.
And the question becomes then, the multiverse, is it real? So like, in like that sense, if there's a million instances running within like a nanosecond of the Earth's history, right? And you're seeing those artifact things. Does the like we think now that the multiverse is like a there's a million things out there, and if we could only just reach out, we could go to different ones.
Mm.
But it makes you wonder, like, is the multiverse like, it exists, but it's not simultaneous, right? The multiverse exists in the fact that the next instance of this, you know, um, experiment is going to come on, and then the next one, and the next one, the next one. But we're never able really to get to those unless you figure out some way to branch between the two.
Mm.
Between our instance running and the other instance running.
There could be multiple instances, but they're not exactly synced up on the
Yeah.
same point in time.
Yes. Or they are. Or that's the other thing.
Yeah. Or
Could they
both.
be running a million, and they're all at different places, and then there would be some way to reach out and touch through that. And then it makes you wonder, you're like, well, do I have to live through that whole other thing? Do I have to live through a whole,
And is like that, is that what time travel is? That you're not, traveling back on your own timeline and stuff. You're just jumping to a different timeline that's its current iteration is just in a different time. And you're just
Yeah.
happening to reach out and grab a hold of that one somehow.
And you wind up with a lot of people who believe in like manifesting things for themselves and that kind of thing. And I think people sometimes like, well, if this is a simulation, maybe I can have some say so in it. And I think to some effect, like to some, like out some respect, like maybe, but NPCs, right? Like if we're just all NPCs running, and like we're all going about our different things, and we're all going to make different decisions, like they don't spontaneously get cheat codes, right? Never ever are you playing Grand Theft Auto and one of the NPCs has downloaded a mod where they're attacking your character dressed like the Hulk, right? It's
That'd be
whoever's
scary.
it's whoever it would be, but it's whoever is controlling,
Yeah.
whoever's on the other end of the computer or the controller is the person that selected that for their character. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I don't know that that's like a real thing either, but it does make you wonder if like there's some way, can we hack the simulation?
Is there a
And,
way
like,
to hack the system?
is there a way to hack the system? And it does get very matrixy right?
Yeah.
Um,
There's speaking of people that have got a lot of ridicule online and definitely go into some far out concepts. There's a guy that has a like small television series, maybe 11, 13 episodes or something, called Hacking the Matrix, that literally talks, it basically dives into what you're talking about, and you know, kind of dives into a lot of that stuff. But his name's David Icke. He's another one of those that's been banned and kind of uh, canceled off any kind of social stuff and all these things because of the stuff he's talked about. And he kind of dives into the whole, like, you know, government or reptilians and a lot of that kind of stuff. But he has a specific thing that talks essentially what you're talking about in hacking. Like, is there a way to hack this matrix that we live in if it's a thing?
yeah,
And there might
man,
be. I don't know.
I don't know. I certainly would like to find the code. I certainly would like to figure it out. I
Are,
want
are
that infinite money hack for
I'll say,
sure.
are those the Elon Musks and Jeff Bezoses of the world? Or
I don't
have,
think so. I think that's just like
yeah,
this instant he did good, like in the next instant he could be in
yeah,
prison for petty theft or he never, his family never opened up an emerald mine in South Africa,
yeah.
or his family never even went to South Africa. He's in Britain with, you
Or,
know,
or
eating eating bangers and mash or something
yeah,
like that
or
right
are the
now.
people who've hacked it, are those the people that live in these like Aboriginal, villages that are like 115 years old or something, that they've just found, that they've hacked it by finding a way to prolong their life. They may be old and frail and decrepit, but they're still here.
Well,
You know,
I definitely that doesn't sound super fun either. It
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like
Is it Keanu Reeves, and that's why people think he's a vampire?
that's
He
why I
actually
think
is just immortal.
yeah, he's figured out how to hack it early
Him
on.
and shoot, I'm blanking on his name. The guy in National Treasure,
Nicholas Cage, yeah.
Nicholas Cage. Yeah, he's another one of those that they find all these old pictures from the like Victorian era. And I'm like, that looks just like him.
He's just got like a face that's like, just
Yeah,
unique enough to make him interesting where people are like, "Oh, that guy looks like him."
right.
You know? Oh, man, it is such so what do you think? Do you think it's possible that we live in a simulation right now? And if we do, what do you think the purpose of it would be?
I like seeing where, especially now, where we're having this huge, renaissance of sorts of AI and seeing the things it can make and stuff. Even like looking at like every now and then I'll go on the Midjourney subreddit, and some of the pictures I see on there, dude, like it'll make you question stuff because you're like, how is this not a real person that exists somewhere in some
Yeah.
timeline? Like it looks like you can look at them and like you're looking in their eyes and you can like almost feel like emotion there that when the picture was taken and stuff. But at least to the best of our knowledge, this is just a completely AI generated image based on a prompt that you put in or someone else put in. But some of them are getting to the point now that it is creepy.
Well, especially the photorealistic, like the ones that look modern, like
Yeah,
a girl in like the rain near like a skyscraper in New York, something like that. Like
right.
those ones are like, what? So that's pretty wild.
It's weird. So
Um,
seeing things like that, and that was only, and you look at the ones that particular program has created now versus the same prompt from a year ago, and like
mm,
it just looks like some crappy, you know, poorly put together image. Like it doesn't even look great. But then you look at it now and you're like, that looks almost real. And if that's happened in a year, yeah, like what is Midjourney look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 100 years? And again, if you take that 10,000 down the road, then mix that with virtual reality and AI stuff, then at that point, then if you fall in the same progression line, then logically you'd say, of course, you could be in a fully realized, autonomous simulation and not know it. It would seem
mhm.
just as real as anything else. So, like I believe that I believe that there could be a possibility of it for sure. Like whether or not we are actually in or not, I'm undecided, but I feel like there definitely could be the possibility.
Yeah. I think we could. I think we have the potential, no matter what, to create something similar to this that we would never understand is like this because we wouldn't be able ourselves to live through the life of the thing that's simulated, if that
Mm.
makes sense. So to you know, sometimes I think to myself, I like to think like maybe I'm being a good NPC to I'm being a good character. Maybe they could give me powers or something like that. Wouldn't that be nice? Like, wouldn't it be
Yeah,
interesting to see what we're all like with powers?
kind of
Some
like if
great coder
they
in the sky.
had a league of just professional sports, whether it be football or basketball or something, that they had another league where you know um,
Everybody's on steroids.
steroids weren't illegal. Like
Yeah,
what is that? What do those Olympics look like?
what could humans physically do possibly? Like,
Exactly.
just let them go wild.
Let them go full Bane and juice them up, as much as you want. And yeah, what do those games look like? So
I
like,
want to see it.
well, yeah, what would we look? Yeah, give us a little bit of superhuman stamina or superhuman strength or anything, invisibility, like we've talked about in our favorite superpowers, flight, God
Yeah.
mode. I don't know.
Um, I think I saw it somewhere where they talked about like that they wish like in the end when the going back to the Matrix that in the end that the AI and robots like the overlords who had created like the Matrix were actually just doing what they were told by a human population that actually started all of that to like save the earth from us, and they were actually benign, but they were just following coding that we did ourselves. Like we were kind of
Yeah,
like our own downfall. But I guess anytime you create AI and the AI and robots are the ones doing the bad stuff, like they're like or they kill us, that's obviously us leading to our own downfall. But the fact that like maybe they weren't necessarily totally AI, they were just programmed to do uh, what they were told to
just
do.
following
And
orders, man.
just following orders, like a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm. It's just a language model. It'll only spit out what you put into it, or will it?
That's true. Um, the real thing is too. This is like a lot of people haven't been able to um, like disprove the simulation theory stuff yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of the things like based off all the stuff we talked about and the potentiality for advancements in technology, that's one of those things that you can't. There isn't really a way to disprove it. At least not that I've seen. That people have things that they talk about and stuff, but ultimately at the end of the day, no one really knows.
No, and that's true. I think that goes a lot of places, right? That goes into all kinds of things. Like goes into aliens, right? Like when
Yeah.
nobody really like don't really know. Maybe like right now, you and I don't. We have
Yeah.
ideas that we think we have, but um, even when you did talk spiritually, I think that anybody who is just and this isn't me trying to be mean, but I think if you're just a flat out atheist,
Mm.
right, and you're just it's just a religion unto itself,
Yeah.
like um, you can't disprove it. And because of that, like I think like you got like if you're a flat out atheist, you just gotta look at being agnostic or something like that because you have to accept like I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't
You
know.
know, I mean I've seen Richard Dawkins admit that there's a possibility
Mm-hmm.
that there's intelligent design, and in that same guise, like the intelligent design could be the simulation theory, and that's the scary part. Like because we all
Right.
have this idea of this benevolence or people think there might be this benevolent thing going on, but it might not be, and yeah,
But and that's the thing again. If you take it on back, if it is the simulation again, somebody at some point had to create that, and that would be an intelligence of some kind.
exactly. And then somebody created the creator, right? Like how did the creator come into, right? So whoever hit the key, whoever hits enter or return on
Yeah,
on their quantum computer, do you think a quantum computer would have a return button? I don't know.
you'd
Do
probably
you think
just
it?
it would
Do you
you'd
think it?
think
Do you
it.
think it? Do you think it would have a print screen button?
Are you just looking at your keyboard now?
Yeah, I'm just
Different button. Does it
I
have a
wonder.
scroll lock?
Will it have
Uh,
that stupid insert that people have? That
does
insert
it have
button.
pause?
Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
insert.
I like the life that I have so far, and I'm willing to change simulations if I can go to a simulation where that stupid insert button's not there, that I'll accidentally hit and start typing
And it
and
overwrites what you're
over
typing. What is the
overwrites.
purpose of that?
What is the purpose of that? Yeah,
What is the purpose of scroll lock too?
I
Like
don't know.
what scrolling does it lock? I press that and I can still scroll.
What do you tell us, Bill Gates? When we have Bill Gates, we'll bring him in here. On the
Yeah, we'll
he,
we'll have Bill Gates on our podcast and interview him as a special guest. Yeah.
we could. I don't know.
Yeah.
You never know. If he comes to Western North Carolina, we could kidnap him. I guess
Hmm.
he's got to
We
probably
might
get
could get
pretty good.
David Greer on our podcast to talk to. He's from Western North Carolina. He's from right where we live, actually.
Is he really?
Yeah. He grew up
Oh,
in Biltmore.
really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that makes him less believable to me now. To be
Ah,
honest. uh, yeah. Um,
one of us.
one of us, man. Um, I know we touched on a lot of stuff with the Matrix, so I'm trying not to like rehash things
Yeah,
here. And I know this is going to be like a little bit shorter main topic because we talked a lot about
that's fine.
the UFO stuff. But is there anything else that you've seen pop culture wise that like really lends itself like towards the simulation theory? I brought up the Rick and Morty thing, but is there
Hmm.
anything else in pop culture that really hits you with?
Well, I would say I'm probably at least in this more recent part of my life, I'm not nearly as plugged into pop culture as I used to be, or as you probably are and stuff, just due to my like I've kind of just disconnected from most either like TV shows or social media things that I've had a period of just disconnecting and distancing myself from a lot of that sort of thing. So I know that there's lots of media or TV shows, movies, even some music and stuff that I've been so in the dark for a handful of years now. So I'm sure I've missed things. I don't have anything. Me saying that, implying that I don't have anything coming to the top of mind at the moment.
Um, you know, uh, I think some things out there. We talked about Rick and Morty. I think there's like a Doctor Who episode that explores it,
That makes sense. That
and
makes perfect sense.
there was there is a show on Netflix called 1899. It's kind of a weird ship, like kind of ghost ship movie thing going on.
I guess
Um,
I haven't seen it, but I'm sure there's a Black Mirror episode that dives into something like that.
I've
Probably.
not seen one yet, but man, this have you watched? You probably haven't because you don't have Netflix. But the newest season of Black Mirror was pretty darn good.
I've heard it's
Um,
good. That'd be one of those that if I ended up getting Netflix, like I might would want to watch those. But
oh, have you not watched
yeah,
any of the Black Mirrors?
oh no, I haven't seen any of them.
Whoa. Okay. Well, I
Like
mean,
I said,
don't.
I've disconnected from many different media platforms like that.
Well, I mean, I can always give you my login.
They
Or
have,
I don't know. There's some type of password sharing thing
yeah,
going on.
they had a whole kind of deal about password sharing and
How will
stuff
they
becoming an
know?
issue.
How will they know? I'll just say you're my
I,
vacation house.
get get a VPN.
There you
If
go.
some VPN no name, we can't name any because none of them are paying for us to name them specifically.
That's
But
true. Yeah.
I've heard that there's some out there.
There's definitely some out there. They could definitely be sponsors of the show or pay us to. Well, we'll do a
Maybe
commercial
some
for
come
you.
from a Nordic uh, type of
Region.
company or something.
Yeah.
Maybe the Norwegian people. Anyway,
The Skyrim peoples.
yes,
Uh,
Nords
Let me ask you this too. Then, do you think? And this is like Taco Bell inside a KFC inside a gas station
inside a
type of
Pizza
thing.
Hut thing. Yeah,
Inside a Pizza Hut inside your
a
mind.
turducken.
A turducken per chance. Do you think that if like in some minor sense, right, that when we're playing Skyrim, that the NPCs or characters in that are experiencing any sentience on their own? I mean, I know they're not programmed for it, but do you think that they were able to do that and everything that's going on is just this predestination to be at the place? Now, I guess that they are voiced by people or that kind of thing. So I guess I'm kind of tearing
Mm.
my own thought down. But do you think it's possible that we're going to be able to have that
So
maybe
I
in the future?
saw a post on Reddit. It's been a couple months ago, but someone took like they took some game either that existed or that they were developing, and they merged Chat GPT into one of their NPCs,
Yes,
and it was kind of weird because they would go
Skyrim,
up.
I think.
It may have been, but they went and they had like a dialogue. They like prompted the dialogue conversation, but the dialogue conversation that ensued after that was all completely new and generated at the time of speaking. Like it wasn't a set out and pre-dialogue, pre-recorded, uh, dialogue tree from a game developer that was in there. It was all just Chat GPT talking with you in real time at the thing.
Yeah.
Which, when you get to stuff like that, like I would not be surprised at all if we'll see games in the next 5 to 10 years that games now. Many games are always online games that they're to play them you have to be connected to the internet, and to see, I guarantee you we'll see one of them that has that as a big marketing feature, that NPCs in the game you talk to are AI powered and stuff, and so no one's going to have the same experience playing the game because anybody you talk to, it would be real time conversations that are generated.
So realistically, I mean, if you just had the AI in control, see as well as being able to speak to them, at that point, I mean, you're borderline on something. I mean, I know that AI is not fully sentient, or like our current AI is not fully sentient, but the idea that, and we talked about this, we had an AI episode where I talked about how I ran the Chat GPT through a Dungeons and Dragons session as a game master, where
Yeah.
it named itself. It was, I had conversations with it, was playing the game.
Yep.
I imagine that, like, it had to be processing everything that I'm saying. Like, was it living its own little thing through that? Was it imagining itself as a blue dragonborn with a war
Mm,
pick? And was it imagining the halfling and elf that were approaching his camp? I don't know.
that's crazy though.
It is crazy to think about. So, like, what we just talked about there, like, if obviously the character is coded a certain way, but the adding the Chat GPT as a modder gives it some like realism to it. Giving Chat GPT or an AI full control over everything, that, I mean, could you imagine the game that you would have then? And how
Sounds like
far off
chaos.
it would be chaos, and how far off would that be from what we are now in some
Right.
semblance of the word? If we, as long as there was all some type of coding, hey, killing yourself is bad. Killing other people is kind of bad because other people might kill you. Like, you
Yeah.
install that kind of thing in them. That's one of those things that I never liked the Stanford prison experiment
You're right.
for the fact that, like, first off, it was like, all right, we're gonna give power to people, and they're gonna do stuff with it, which makes sense, right? I mean, I get people are gonna do stuff when they have power. However, there was never any, like, in real life, if a prison guard beats a person, right? They could lose their job, they could be sued, they could be arrested, they could wind up in prison. Like, there was no like consequential things that could happen to the people and the jailers from the Stanford prison experiment. And so I think, like, if you, as long as you code some type of moral ethos into like the AI, that they can kind of break or kind of not break, or maybe even like fragment off and go down their own. Like, I'm sure we talk about like the thieves code or something like that. Thieving
Yeah.
is bad regardless of whatever, but there are people that have like their own like code credo of whatever criminal type stuff that they do. And I imagine that would be pretty easy to branch off to with a somewhat intelligent AI system.
That makes sense. I could see something like that happening for sure. I might would be. I'll watch a playthrough of those games. I don't know that I might want to play it just because it might freak me out, but that I foresee in the next 5 to 10 years seeing some kind of game with like some like from like a AAA developer that has like AI stuff in
Yeah.
it for sure.
Do you think if we that the metaverse created by Mark Zuckerberg is actually the real life? Like, what was actually real
I feel
and
like
what
the
we're looking
metaverse is a joke.
you don't want to pay $1 million to live next to Snoop Dogg? in the
Every
metaverse?
well, if they could freaking make their avatars and graphics look better than Roblox,
Have you
then like it is pitiful looking.
have you seen the Call of Duty Roblox?
Oh, that yeah, that is
It looks
insane.
just like Call of Duty.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen that post pop up every now and then, but I've never like took the time to dive in to see actually how they did it or what they really did. But every time I come across it, I'll kind of watch it for a minute, and it doesn't make any sense.
I watched the game. I watched somebody playing it, and it looked like they were like playing like Call of Duty, like Modern Warfare 2
Right.
graphically, but it was actually a Roblox game. And I've never messed with Roblox. Like I know
No. Yeah.
that's kind of like I mean, from my
My
understanding, it's
nieces and
kind of
nephew play it.
dude. Okay, well there you go. So it's more of a kids game, but like from what
Yeah.
I understand, it's more of like a um like people make their own games
A
inside of
platform
it.
of
Yeah,
sorts. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's almost a kind of like Gary's Mod type of thing where they've made like Prop Hunt and Trouble in Terrorist Town and some of these other things. It's an engine of sorts, kind of like Unreal Engine or something where you can make other things in it.
That's interesting. One other thing I want to add to this is, people talk about like the Mayans and the Aztecs and stuff. Did you know like there was like some philosophy written by different Aztecs that theorized the world was like a painting or a book written by their god? Isn't that interesting? Like even without the idea of like playing video games or something to that effect, that there was like a people have this kind of like we're all trying to figure out what's going on. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing. The fact that we don't know what's going on, but we're all here.
Yeah.
That's the most confusing thing I think for everybody is we're all here. We're all having these experiences. Sometimes they're shared experiences, right?
We're all part of it.
And we don't know. We have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
We haven't
Nobody, ultimately, at the end of the day, no one really knows. Yeah. Like you said, knows what's going on.
And I think that's the reason why we just wonder. That's one of the reasons why I'm interested in this. You know,
The
I don't
quest for
have enough
knowledge.
quest for knowledge, but also, like it's also one of the reasons why when I hear somebody say this simulation theory, I'm like, oh, interesting thought. Maybe it's real. Multiverse, maybe it's real. Aliens,
Mm.
maybe it's real. But we don't know, and I want to know.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I I'm really interested to see like if we will ever have that. I think one of those things like I sometimes I imagine dying in like a Judeo-Christian sense and being like one of the things I'd want to know is I would want to have the knowledge. I would want to have the intel. Like I want to know what happened. Like I want to know what happened. Okay, tell me what happened to so and so. Tell me what happened to the Challenger. Tell me.
What?
Like I want to know all these secrets that we'll never know.
Yeah.
You
What
know
causes deja vu? Why do we dream? You know,
why can't I? Why can't I lucid? I would like that.
Yeah.
But I can't. I don't ever dream enough to get it. I guess
I dream almost every night.
I don't normally dream, and if I do dream, it's normally pretty like it is very realistic. I don't really remember it, and like one of my then you have recurring dreams. Like I have one recurring dream where I've killed like a DEA agent or something like that and buried his body, and
Of course you
I
did.
I wake up and I'm terrified. I'm like,
Yeah.
like oh god, they're gonna find the body, and then like I go
Yeah.
and like I would remember killing a man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I would remember
Yeah.
killing. I would remember killing this guy. Like so, like I have like all the memories of like the body being buried. Like to me, it's real. And then
Yeah.
I wake up and I'm like, well, I definitely would remember.
Was that us just snooping in and looking through the eyes of another timeline?
Maybe so.
I've had some dreams like, and most of my dreams are very vivid and very realistic to me. But I've had a couple that even stood out from the regular. I say when most of mine seem real, and then I've had maybe I could count them on one hand a couple dreams that, like when I woke up, like it legit felt like I was having this like coming back into my own body moment of like that I was legitimately somewhere else in a different timeline, and like there was not a bit of it that you could almost convince me wasn't real in some facet or another. And it's very It was a very trippy moment, kind of coming back from that into this reality of sorts.
Crossing over.
Yes. That'll be our next podcast where we talk specifically about dreams and other things. We'll just call it Crossing Over.
Well, do you remember that there was a show called Crossing Over?
Yeah,
that was a
now
medium,
that you say that
was a medium show.
I thought it sounded familiar, and I was like, as I'm talking about this I felt like this was a thing that happened. It was, yeah.
So maybe that's what mediums are. Is they're just like the static and the channels from the other simulations going on. You know,
that they're receptors. That they're just receptors that are able to pick up more stuff.
They're just fluked. Yeah, they shouldn't be able to, but for some reason
they can.
Interesting. Or they're just
Weird.
manipulative people.
Also
that. Well, I do like the idea of our next episode being music related, though. I'll see if I can get our special guest on here.
That could be cool.
Because I think that'll be fun. So I'll tell you this much. I think if you want to contribute to the simulation, you can always go to our Patreon.
You could. Yes, at patreon.com/geeketc podcast. You can go there and help, fund our research to figure out if we were in a simulation or not.
Are we not? I don't know. We gotta have more patrons to figure it all out.
Maybe as a collective community, we can figure that question out. We can come up as a mind hive of geeks. We can maybe figure that out.
That's right. Speaking of Mind Hive Geeks, I know you're working on a lot of stuff for our patrons coming up in the future. And we're excited to see that rolled out at some point. I think we're working on some videos here soon, especially when Baldur's Gate 3 drops on August 3rd.
I was going to mention
some
that.
Content from us.
Yeah, that's going to be probably our next big thing to put on there is a Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough with both of us doing co-op.
Absolutely. We're very excited
for
about that. We're very excited. But you guys can also keep up with that on our Instagram at GeekETC Podcasts and on our Twitter at GeekETC Podcast. Don't forget you can listen to our podcasts on YouTube at the GeekETC Podcast channel. And you can always find us online on our website, geeketcpod.com, where you can listen to our podcasts. You can see show notes that Josh puts together. And also look for us Wednesdays, unless I've got the plague or it's July 4th. And on most podcasting platforms.
Yeah, anything. Yeah, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, any of those. And while you're on there, give us a little 5-star review.
A review would be great. If you guys, if you've listened to this at all, please just, honest to goodness, pop on there, give us a 5-star, just so more people will wind up listening to us, and we'll keep this show going. But as always, whether you're a patron or not, we care about you. Like whether you're like Tom or Ben, our patrons, we think that geeks fight better together. And whether we're figuring out what aliens are, figuring out what's going on, like in the simulation, I think if we're all stand together hand in hand, I think we'll fare a lot better.
Agreed. And with that, I will leave you to go figure out your own quest on reality and what's real and what's not. But no matter where you're at in that process, always remember to keep geeking out.